Hi, good morning. How's everyone? I want to share something with you, and this is important as parents that are still raising children that are in the school systems, no matter which school system that you're in. It's very important for parents to stay involved in their children's activities, their studies on what they're doing, as far as looking into the campus portal, because most school systems have a portal that a parent can sign into to look at what their children are doing as far as their grades. They can communicate via email, about setting up parent teacher conferences, phone calls, if you can't make it into the school, and we realize the social distancing. So if you can't make it to the school, maybe a Zoom meeting or a virtual phone call to, try to resolve any issues that come about. Also making sure that your phone number is up to date, the most current telephone number, so that if there is a problem and the school calls, you will get the phone call. And if you have an answering machine, most people deal with cell phones, but some people still have a landline where, you can get phone calls unless your child intercepts those phone calls and deletes them or turns off the answering machine. You may not get those phone calls. Also, making sure your home address is updated with the school system, so that if they have to mail out any letters because they haven't been able to reach you by telephone, that you will get those letters. If you um, are the one that picks up the mail, whether it comes directly to the house or to a set of mailboxes, where most communities have mailboxes now. They don't necessarily have the little mailbox that sits in front of your house anymore. Or if you live in a, some apartments or, townhomes, they may have an area where you pick up your mail from there with a key. So if your child is picking up the mail on your behalf and they see something from the school system, they might not give you that information. So there's a lot of different reasons. You may not get the information, but then there's a lot of ways to get the information if there is a problem with you not receiving the information. It's best to sign into the portal of the school system to look into what's going on with your school, with your child's school. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I came across an article where this young man, he failed 22 classes. He has a GPA of 0.13, and he ranked number 3 or something in the top of his class. And what's sad about this situation is that the mother is actually blaming the school system, and all she really was saying is they failed him, 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 they failed him. That's what she's saying. And she also made the statement that she was aware that her child was failing, but she thought that he was doing okay because they were promoting him. So if your child is failing, how can you assume that your child is doing okay if they're failing? And most of us know that from elementary all the way up into college is that there is standards for passing grades. In the 50s is an F. In the 70s is a D. In the 50s is an F, in the 60s is a D, in the 70s is a C, in the 80s is a B, and in the 90s is an A. So we know that if your child is failing, how could you assume that they're doing okay based on the standards that have been set for many, many years, including probably when this mother went to school, has attended school? The standards as far as the grading system really hasn't changed all that much. Some teachers and professors will grade on a sliding curve, but we're not talking about the sliding curve. We're talking about in the 50s, it's usually in 50s there's an F, 60s is a D, 70s is a C, 80s is a B, and 90s is an A. So when you look at this, how can you say that you thought your son was doing okay when he was failing, and you were aware that he was failing, and you didn't bother to do anything, and you're blaming the school system 100%? And I have to I'm not here to bash this mother, but I am going to say that as mothers and as fathers, we have to take some accountability for the choices and decisions that we make or do not make. And when I think about this mother stating that the school system failed her, and now you have this administrator saying, yes, they failed him. And that's one of my kids. And not saying biological, but he's saying one of his kids in the school system, I guess he oversees as an administrator. I believe that he's saying that, but part of it is the school system, but also part of it is the child, and also as well as the parent. So when I look at who's responsible for what transpired with the child and his experience at school, it's the micro, the meso, and the macro, because the child knows right from wrong. He knew he was failing. He missed 225 days of school. Okay. And so that's real bad too. He was missing school, which is a truancy issue. It's excessive. Not only that, the parents can also be charged for their child not attending school and not giving the appropriate excuse or written letter or note to why the child is not in school. And so I saw, and if you look at the video, I'm going to try to post a video in my link, but if you look at the video, he had a red remote in his hand, and he's sitting on a bed in a dark room, and it looks like he's playing video games. So it would seem to me that this young man spent most of his time playing videos. He didn't interact, he didn't engage, he didn't sign on for virtual learning, if that was the case, because most schools were part of virtual learning, and some of them are just going back to school from virtual learning, but he did not bother to do any of those things. Now, there's another key to this too that I want to say, is that the mother worked 3 jobs, and she stated that in the article she worked 3 jobs. And I'm not bashing any mother for working 3 jobs, because my mother worked 3 jobs. But however, my mother was involved in our school. She was definitely involved. She went up to the school. She had conferences, she had dialogues, and she was engaged, and so I know that it's possible to work 3 jobs and still be involved in your children's school life. You know, we got to be accountable. We can't continue to blame other people when there is obvious obvious that we have to accept some accountability for the choices and the decisions that we make. And in this case, there's 3 issues here, systems that I'm looking at: micro, meso, and macro, where this lady, the son, and the school, they're all part of the system that should have done better to make sure that this child did not promote if he did not deserve to be promoted, and to make sure that he was getting what he needed to succeed. But again, it's easier for us to blame the outside sources than to look at what we could have done better as parents, and to go along with and say the school failed my son, and say that over and over and over, and it is hurtful. She shed some tears. It is hurtful. But to say the school system failed over and over and over are trigger words for people to say, yeah, they failed him. But somewhere we, as the Black community, Black parents, and ourselves as teenagers going into adulthood, we have to learn accountability, be responsible, but we also have to be taught that at a very young age. And I'm not sure the whole dynamics of the situation, but it almost sounds like if there's younger children in the home, he might have been responsible for the younger children as well. And he's 17 and he's not going to school. He's playing video games. As you can see, he had a remote in his hand. When you see the video, a remote in his hand, it was red, and he's sitting on a bed. That's probably what he's doing. And he's not going to school. He probably had a lot on his plate, because if you as a parent are working 3 jobs and you have younger children and you have an older child, then 9 times out of 10, that older child is going to be made to be responsible for the younger siblings. And it's unfortunate that this situation happened, and it was in Baltimore. This was in the Baltimore school system. So they talk about the impoverished and Baltimore, and they're saying the school should be shut down. I'm not sure if that's if that's drastic. I'm not sure if that's the case, because I feel like, I do believe, and if you look at the stats of what they showed in the video, there's a lot of students that really aren't passing. So I believe that it definitely needs to be looked into, and an overall overhaul of the administrators and who's all involved in the leadership in that school district, to make some significant changes and be held accountable by the state, because it sounds like it was a public school. I'm not, but however, there is some accountability that needs to happen. And it's not just with the macro system, it's also with the micro and the Mezzo system. And I know this is a different subject that I'm bringing you, but when you look at even the choices that were made with the situation, with the RSK, RSK situation, they say that children are not, advanced in their brain to make these decisions. But children know right from wrong, and if you're failing or not. If you're intercepting those phone calls or not. If you're checking the mail and getting rid of the letters. All those things that you're doing that's not right. If that's the case, this is alleged, so I'm not saying he did those things, but children can do those things. They will do those things. And so I'm not saying he did those things, but it's a big possibility that might have been going on. And if there's no phone number, updated phone number, how can the school reach you? Or how can you get the information if you don't provide an updated phone number, an updated address? So we have to look at some accountability on the parents' part as well, because with the parent, you should have been looking into that portal. The portal is there for you to look into. It's there to email back and forth. And as soon as you knew that he was failing and they were still promoting him, you should have made sure that either he made up assignments, that he got a tutor. Those some things that should have happened, and working with the school district to make sure that your son brings himself up to standards, instead of blaming the school system and saying, well, I knew he was failing, but they were promoting him, so I thought everything was fine. That right there, that part really kind of struck a nerve with me. And then the macro system to promote him, knowing that he's failing. He failed Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Spanish 1, but you're still promoting him even though he's failing. The school system should have done something more, because on the school policy, it also says it's against the law not for a child to attend school, and the parent can be prosecuted. So did you even go that far to say that the parent is going to be prosecuted and notify the parent that they could be prosecuted? Maybe that would have, alerted the parent. And I'm not saying parents should be prosecuted. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, what drastic measures did this school system take to get the attention of the parent? Because when I was attending school and my brothers were attending school, and I have older brothers as well, if they didn't go to school, let me tell you, there was a problem. And the truant officer at that time, and I understand they don't do that anymore, but they went out to the home and they did threaten the parents with legal action, that they were going to be prosecuted when they didn't show up to school. And there was a lot going on back then. But what I'm saying is that it seems like we live in a society where there's just no accountability anymore. And we want to always blame the outside. We always want to blame the macro systems 100%. We want to blame the oppressor 100%. We want to continue to do that. But we, as a Black community, as Black people, we have got to do better. As African Americans, whatever you identify yourself as, no offense to anyone, because I'm Black, I'm African American, but we have got to do better when it comes down to the accountability and responsibility of ourselves. And I'm not going to take back anything I say on this video unless I made a mistake in what I read. That's the only thing I will take back. If I find myself that needs to be corrected, then I stand corrected. Other than that, I'm not going to, because I believe that we as a Black community, as Black people, need to start doing better and standing up, being accountable and being held accountable for the choices and actions that we participate in, that we make or don't make. And again, I cannot say that it's okay 100% on this school system, because the parent has a responsibility to their children. And I'm going to say this: the parents are responsible for their children. Even if you send your child to a school and we as parents expect a reasonable amount of accountability and even protection of our children when they're in the school system, but we still are the parents that are 100% pretty much responsible for our children. And I know, as a working parent, because I definitely was a working parent, but I still had to take off work. When I got those phone calls, oh yeah, I was involved. I definitely held my son accountable. And not only that, I talked to the teachers when stuff wasn't right. I listened to my child also, and when things weren't right, I talked to the teacher. And the teacher, one time, a teacher and I, we had an issue, because you are not going to disrespect and act like you are not the teacher. You are in a leadership position. You are supposed to be educated to teach children. So you cannot come at me or my child in an incorrect, irresponsible, less than professional, because she was very unprofessional at one point, and I had to step in and say, stop, you are the professional, you are the teacher, you need to stop, and you can talk to me, and I will deal with my child for what his indiscretions and his problem. I'm going to take care of that, but you are not going to do what you're doing and get away with that. I have no problem with going against the school board. I have no problem with that, because believe me, I've done that when I was raising my child, because wrong is wrong and right is right. But when my child was wrong, I held him accountable. And as parents, we have got to do better in holding our children accountable, but also listening to them, getting involved, being involved in their studies, getting the help that they need if you are not able to help them in their studies. Because everyone's not going to be a math major. Everybody's not going to be an English major or whatever. So we do need some time to get our children help when we are not able to do it ourselves, when it comes to trying to teach them lessons that they are struggling with. But it is, there's a lot of resources out here and videos and YouTube videos. There's a lot of programs and access to things if we will take the time to look into them. But however, nevertheless, we definitely have to be more accountable for ourselves and stop blaming others. We definitely need to stop pointing fingers and blaming others 100%. I understand the school has some responsibility and accountability in this as the macro system, but also the Mezzo system comes in with the parent, and the micro is the child himself, because at 17, you know when you're passing or failing, you know right from wrong. And again, there are a lot of children that will, delete messages off of the answer machine. They will update the phone number to a number that might not be the right number, because they don't want to be caught up. They don't want their parents or mother to know that they're doing wrong, that they're failing, that they're not attending school. There is a lot of things that we can, think about when we read a article like this. It should be something that we all as parents should be concerned about, whether it's our child or not. But if it's in your community, I would be concerned if it was in my community. It's not even in my community. And I saw the article and I was like, this is something that definitely we can share and talk about, on platforms, that to give parents tools to, make sure that they, their children succeed at every cost, it's really sad that this situation is what it is, and to have a GPA of 0.13. But she did transfer her child out, and they're giving him a 2023 graduation date, prospective graduation date, if he works hard. So there are some things that need to happen. But again, there are some key things that I saw. Working 3 jobs is hard to be involved in your children education like that, and even in their lives. But I pray that there is going to be someone that can mentor and come in and help manage you know, help manage things better, even if you have to work 3 jobs, because we do know it's hard. And when you're a single parent and you may not be getting any type of help from the fathers, I don't know that about this mother, so I don't want to speculate, but I'm just saying that it can be definitely be a difficult financial journey, and what I'm going to say. So my prayers go out to all involved in the micro, meso, and macro system. But again, we as a black community, as black people, as black parents, as individuals, have to take some accountability and responsibility and hold ourselves accountable for the mistakes that we make. We have to hold ourselves accountable, identify the mistakes, be willing to own them, accept them, and own them. Own those mistakes, recognize them, and then ask for forgiveness and ask God to show us a better way, and to learn, give us the information that we lack, and to show us and give us knowledge where we don't have that knowledge. And God will do that. He will definitely do it. God will answer prayers that are in line with his purpose. And we are not to, push our children to wrath and things like that. And so we as parents do need to love our children and nurture them, but we also want to make sure that our children have the best that they can when it comes to raising them in a manner of the basic needs and necessities, and teaching them how to be productive citizens. And one of the things is about that as raising children. We definitely, I looked at what she said about, getting my thoughts together again. What she said, that he was failing and she was aware of it, but she thought everything was okay. So that concerns me also, because it's saying to me that as long as your child is promoted, even though I don't care what their grades are, I don't care, how well or poorly they do, as long as they're being promoted. That said a lot to me, because it's saying that even though my child was failing, they still promoted him. So I thought things were okay. I assumed things were okay. Not if your child is failing. And wouldn't you want more for your child than to have all F's on a report card and they still pass him, and say they passed him to the point of, him graduating with all F's? Is that what you want for your child? Is to be an F student all through school and then become an F student in life? I find that very difficult to accept and to swallow. Everybody, I guess, has standards for their children and their families, but that's pretty low if you're going to say that it's okay for my child to fail, and I knew he was failing, but because they were promoting him. So that says that what are we teaching our children? What are the standards for our children? If that's all we say is that, hey, I knew he was failing, but they still promoted him, so I was okay with that because I thought everything was going good. She didn't say she was okay with it, but she said, I assumed everything was he was doing good. He was doing good. He was doing okay. Paraphrasing, however her words were, but she said that. So I'm saying, really? So you really didn't care if your child was had F's, all F's, you didn't care. It's just as long as they were promoting him. And now you find out. So somewhere you have to take some ownership. You can't just blame that on the school, because I looked at the video, I listened to it, and I'm just not, no, we have to take some responsibility. And we do, like I said, own that. Own it, accept it, ask for forgiveness, repent, and move forward. And hopefully your child has learned a value lesson from that. And hopefully you are, more involved in doing right and getting in that portal and checking it out and making sure everything's good, and being involved and asking him if everything's okay. Because I'm sure his self-esteem is low, and it might have been low prior because he only passed 3 classes. He only passed 3 classes. 3. And that's really sad. Out of 4 years, 3 classes. And so when we look at what can we do better? What can we truly do better at? It's just really, we can't sit here and say, that, it's always the macro systems that's failing us. We can't say that when we're not doing our part. So I hope that, we got something out of this video. If you're raising children or grandchildren, and God bless you all on today. Peace out.